As I said to somebody this morning, when you're a child, Advent is a marathon. When you're an adult, it's a sprint. I hope you're hanging in there. We're walking toward a dream. Back at the first Sunday of Advent, from the furthest distance away from the dream come true, the way a psalmist from the time of David might have seen it, the dream looked like a thriving city on a hill, a city with God at its center and peace with its neighbors. And that is a dream worth dreaming. Around the 8th century, Isaiah saw the dream closer, and the dream for Isaiah began to take human form. That's what last Sunday's wonderful music was all about. Isaiah's chapter 11 vision of God sending into the world a new kind of person. And that's a powerful dream too. But the closer that person comes, the more we realize that he too embodies a dream, and it is the dream of a new way, a reversal of the way things are. He brings a new way of thinking and acting, of believing and being in the world. It is both a threat to the status quo and the cure for it. And he brings it to us so that it can be ours. Isaiah saw this new way as a highway running through a wilderness. And wherever the highway goes, the natural world just bursts to life around it. Remember that to the Hebrew mind, the wilderness of their past wandering signified only scarcity and poverty and desperation and suffering. And yet in this dream, the wilderness is actually transformed into a garden. Streams of water appear in the desert of all places. Springs form pools. Flowers and plants blossom. Animals thrive. And people too become whole. The weak, strong, the sick, well, the blind seeing, the lame leaping, the fearful courageous, all nature singing with joy and giving glory to God. They call this highway the Holy Way. And at the culmination of the dream, down that road comes all their ransomed family and friends. Now there's a sight. Lost fathers and grandfathers and mothers and sisters, all leaving bondage behind and returning home. You have to have suffered loss to understand the power and the beauty of this dream. But to be part of this celebration, this higher way, nature must welcome change. For the wolf and the lamb to lie down together. The leopard and the kid, the calf and the lion, they first have to surrender their nature. Predator has to surrender its exploitation of the weak, its destruction of life, and prey has to surrender its fear of the strong. It causes it to flee from life. They each have come to believe that their survival depends upon obeying their nature, and so change will not come easy. The new way is not simply a happy emotion. It's a new order, and it requires changed behavior. Every year, my family and I watch the movie musical Scrooge. It is a religious tradition in our house. And every year for 15, 20 years, we've seen something new in it. Every year. When Ebenezer Scrooge's eyes are finally opened by his visiting spirits, he begins to see the ways that he himself has been a predator, selfishly exploiting the vulnerability of other people. And he sees the way that he has been prey, justifying his own meanness by claiming to be a victim and shielding himself from the life he feared and the joy he might have embraced and the love he might have known. For Scrooge to find redemption means not only that he has a divine intervention, it means that he must learn to become a new kind of person. and practice a new kind of generosity. It means learning to walk in a new way. And when Scrooge did, he was amazed to find that he was not only able to experience the joy of Christmas, but that he, of all people, could be a source of the same joy. People thought of him as Santa Claus. And that's a big change, because joy sprang up around him as he made his transformed way through town. And that is the dream Isaiah saw, the life-giving power of the new way. But Isaiah could only dream of the person who would one day embody it. John the Baptist actually knew the person, but struggled to see the dream. John knew Jesus personally. They were cousins. But John could only imagine change coming into the world in a top-down way. As a new king would come and take power and decree a new way. I mean, how else could change come? Surely not from the bottom up. Surely not from a baby. Surely not from a poor teacher with no money and no army. John had the right person in mind, but his imagination had not yet been converted to the new way. So, for going around saying that Jesus, not Caesar, was Lord and King, John went to prison. And Jesus did not come to his rescue. And John was disillusioned beyond words. And he wrote to Jesus to tell him so. "Are you not the one we thought you were?" he asked. "I am running out of time." But the message Jesus sent back was not plans for a jailbreak. Instead, it was a clarification of the dream and hard evidence that it was coming true. Look around you. The dream is coming true. The new order is already here, and it is changing lives. And it is worth all the sacrifices we have to make for its sake, John. You have already done your part, and you will be happy even in this circumstance if you stop taking offense at the way God chooses to work. Jesus' disciples were shocked by this as well. How can you not reach out to John? But Jesus once again moved their focus from the person to the way. He said, "No one ever born was greater than John, but in the new order, the least person will be greater than John. Up will be down, and to die for Christ's sake, as John would do, is to truly live." And I think we're supposed to notice the great difference between John the Baptist's stay in prison and the Apostle Paul's, who never saw Jesus, but understood the way so thoroughly that from prison he could write of freedom and loss for the sake of gain and joy in all circumstances. Isaiah, like Paul, never saw the person, but they saw the way. John knew the person, but could not grasp the way. And we who live on this side of Christmas have more in common with John. We think we know Jesus, and we can be so focused on the newborn that we forget about the change he came to bring. And when the chips are down for us, like they were for John, we can find ourselves disillusioned with Jesus and unable to celebrate the season. There's a new rock band cultivating a huge following behind a new CD of catchy, sometimes tender, very pop-savvy songs. What else is new? Well, it turns out that this band is a band of former Christians, now so bitterly disillusioned that their work is designed, every song on a 15-song album, their work is designed to gently walk believers into the arms of atheism. "I'll make a deal with you, Jesus," they sing. "Say one word where I can hear it, and I'll believe in you." And they're having a powerful impact. I don't blame them, honestly. I respect their honesty and their desire to set people free from religious bondage. I believe it is sincere. I place the blame at the terminally inadequate Christianity they were raised in. The Christianity of shallow, pie-in-the-sky emotionalism, the sectarian, anti-intellectual, biblical literalism, religious legalism that's exclusive even when it wears blue jeans to church. The Christianity that separates the person of Jesus from the way of Jesus, claiming familiarity with Him while ignoring the way He taught us to live. John reminds us that without understanding the way of Jesus, you can look Him right in the eye and be disillusioned with Him. We want a faith that is more belief than practice. We want the benefits of spiritual intimacy in exchange for just saying we believe certain things or hold certain opinions or defend certain values. But here's the thing. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about our opinions and our beliefs. Nobody cares until those values and beliefs make a difference for them. But look at the way, look for the way, and you see that even the infant proclaims it. In his social status, children had none. In his social status, he reminds us to take the last and lowest place. In his poverty, he reminds us that we will never find meaning in material wealth and creature comforts. In his lowly surroundings, he reminds us that humility is the mother of all virtues. In his vulnerability, he teaches us not to put our faith in security, not to expect it or even to seek it, but to embrace the vulnerability that makes love possible. In his helplessness, he draws out our compassion, our very best impulse, and even his crying reminds us of the urgency of serving him right now through serving one another. The whole of Jesus' teaching is bound up in those swaddling clothes. And it asks something of us. Nothing on earth is more demanding than a newborn baby. This infant reminds us that our first task is to become human, to become fully human, which is a radical notion in a society of ours reduced to predator and prey. On every corner of my neighborhood is a predatory lender or a junk food ripoff or a gambling enticement for the poor. And the church should have something to say about the religion of profit-seeking that treats the people God loves as the means to an end rather than the end itself. And the religion of efficiency at all costs that replaces human beings who need jobs with technologies that have no needs. And the consumer religion that turns us Christians, especially at Christmas time, into customers so effectively that we can't remember what it is to be worshipers or ministers. It turns us into people who try to make deals with God because all we know is deals. Faithfulness demands that we have the courage to say, this is not the way. The infant can only thrive when a society prizes every infant and gives them access to health and education and work with dignity and spiritual wholeness and loving community. This is how the kingdom comes. Author Danny Siegel came to our fellowship hall Thursday night to remind us of how powerful the way can be at even the tiniest and most mundane of levels. He has made it his life's work to simply pass along the simplest of ideas for reversing the status quo with small acts of love. I have a copy of his ideas if anyone wants one. Danny has learned to see how every object can have utility in service to the way. Even trash, the discarded socks that could be the difference between a homeless person keeping all her fingers and toes through the winter. the discarded food that could be the difference in whether a child gets to eat who has no access to the school lunch programs during the holidays, the discarded car seats that could save a child's life but are too expensive for most families to buy new. He reminds us that the stuffed animal, the kind that we throw away to make room for more stuffed animals, that stuffed animals take on a whole new meaning when they are given in service to the kingdom. A stuffed animal has a whole new meaning when it comes out of a police car where a domestic abuse arrest has been made. Or from a fire station. He told the story of one middle-aged woman recounting her experience as a 6-year-old girl standing outside in the cold and watching her home burn to the ground. She could have used a stuffed animal right about then. Even the children spending a night in a homeless shelter or a game guest room, greeted by the same stuffed animal. Our junk, even our junk takes on new meaning when it services the way. And if that's true of our stuff, how much more true is it of the human capital that you carry around inside your mind and heart every day, your gifts and talents and abilities, the power of your sheer presence when you walk beside a hurting person with no agenda but compassion. You know, one of the great crimes in our history, still waiting for justice, is what our misguided forebears did to the Native American people who live on the land we now call home. In this area, it was the Cherokee who were encroached upon and forced to learn a new language and infected with foreign germs and cheated and lied to, eventually moved off their land on long marches to land that wasn't good for much of anything. You'd think that there would still be a burning hatred for all the things that white culture is. And yet this morning, if we could drive together over to Cherokee country, we would find in even a small town like Snowbird as many as 4 Baptist churches full of Christians singing the same hymns we are singing. Now, how can that be? Isn't that the religion of the oppressor? Well, here's the story. In 1825, Samuel Worcester, a white descendant of Baptist clergy in England, left Massachusetts to be a missionary to the Cherokee. And it wasn't long before he realized that he could only teach them English by learning their language first. And his mission to convert them soon evolved into an advocacy for them against all the injustices done to them. He started a newspaper to try to help unify them, to give them strength. So they gave him a Cherokee name, Atse-Nutse. It means messenger. He mounted legal campaigns against the injustices they were being subject to, taking one all the way to the Supreme Court and actually winning, even though the states ignored the ruling. And ultimately, in 1838, when they forced the Cherokee in Georgia to move to Indian Territory out west, Worcester went with them. He went with them on what we now call the Trail of Tears. And on that 17-day journey, his wife got a fever and died. And all of his household possessions were lost. He walked their Trail of Tears with them. He never left them. And when they saw that, they saw a difference between a Christianity that talked but lied and one that finally stopped talking and started walking. And for 200 years now, they have been singing Amazing Grace in Cherokee country, practicing forgiveness and dreaming God's dream. Do you know that the first Christians were not called Christians? They were called people of the way. And the disillusioned people who have encountered them say it is like walking in darkness and seeing a great light. Thanks be to God for the child who comes to walk beside us and sends us out today like wise men, dreaming a new dream and going home by another way.